Gear up, because this is the Fuel Your Marketing podcast, designed to accelerate sales and grow your business. Let's welcome your host, Arti Sharma.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Fuel Your Marketing. I'm your host, Arti, and today I'm very thrilled to have Steph Reck join me on the show. From big data in 2002 to generative AI and to working with a lot of ad agencies and making sure companies who are in under 10 million to up to 70 million are achieving the return on marketing that many companies promise. Steph Reck has seen it all. And today it's my pleasure and honor to have her as a guest. And her career is expansive, I would say. She has truly some great experience and expertise, and I can't wait to deep dive into it. Steph, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Arti, for having me. I appreciate it.
Steph, talk to me a little bit about your experience. I couldn't do justice to everything that you've shared with me. So talk to me a little bit about your personal life and your professional career, and we'll go from there.
Well, as you mentioned, I started my career in data back in 2002, and it was data that was aggregated, normalized, and mapped data back in the day. And then we were able to take that data over the years and utilize it for data analytics. And that was all in the automotive space. We were looking at, I remember Cummins engine came to me and said, hey, we haven't changed the price of our engines for X number of years. Can you run some data analysis for us and tell us what we should increase the engine price to, how that's going to impact our business overall? And here I am, this account executive, and I had to go and talk with our product people, our data analysts, and put together a data model that made sense for them. At that point, they were able to increase the price of their engines and see a large return on their overall investment in the small piece that it was to just have us run that data analysis, but also the impact that it had on the greater automotive space was really kind of astounding to me. And that was one of my aha moments back in the day when I went, wow, if I can tell the right story with data, we can change a lot of things for the better. And I moved to different ad agencies over the years, 2 different ad agencies after that. And one of them had an amazing product that as a sales leader, I thought, wow, this would change the tide. Remember the days when we would just, as salespeople, we pick up a phone and our goal was to have 120, 140 dials a day. If we had that, we probably had a 10% connection rate. And out of that 10% connection rate, we had another rate of actual set appointments. And that's how we planned scalability across the sales team. We didn't have much more than a CRM at that point. So here comes this technology that could actually tell my sales team when someone was back on the website, what they were looking at, what their intent level was. And the reason this product came to light was because the founder of the company had a separate company and he didn't have a lot of time to focus on it. And he wanted to make sure that he could really focus his efforts on just those potential customers who had high intent and were back on the website. That was it. I don't even know how high the intent was. It was just, hey, somebody now had a second or a third visit back to my website. They're the priority call for the day. Things like that just made one person's life easier are what have changed the tide now when we look at AI over the last 10 years and why some of these tools have been built. It's all about, like, how can I make my job a little bit more efficient? And now we find that kind of intent data is spanning, globally in all of our agencies and a lot of our sales teams.
Yeah, and they're using it. So you said AI over the last 10 years. I mean, for our listeners, AI has been around for 10 years. I want to hear more about that from you because many, because it's been made so accessible easily that many think it's such a new concept. So talk to me a little bit about that. And talk to me a little bit also about, when you talked about scaling the startups, that was like, going from guerrilla startup strategies, because that I think back in the day was so key and important, but at the same time, not many people knew how to kind of use the intent data. And today, with AI, it's available. So talk to me a little bit about your AI for 10 years and how has it evolved? And you've seen it all, right? So
Yeah.
talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, I typically have been working with pre-seed startups or bootstrap startups, so we are fairly resource constrained. So I have learned how to be very scrappy and resilient in building out the go-to-market teams from marketing, sales, and CS. And I've really focused on making sure that we're providing the best customer experience possible. It's one thing to bring in new customers, but we often found that we had a leaky bucket. And so I was constantly looking at, well, I don't want to have to oversell this month just to refill the customers that we lost out of the back end. Like that's a
Retention
recipe for
was not even a
disaster.
metric, right? Back in the day.
Yeah.
I said retention was not even a metric back out there.
No, 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 no. We did focus at iParents, we focused on churn a little bit. So we had a churn number that we wanted to stay within, but they measured it on a monthly basis versus an annual basis. And so when you look at it on a monthly basis, it doesn't look like it's that big of a number. When you aggregate that over a year and you start looking at an annual number, you see that you've lost so much revenue and potential revenue. It's kind of astounding. And that's the number that I wanted to focus on. And I wanted to get that as low as possible. And the way that you do that is by providing a consultative approach, partnering with your customers, reminding them consistently of the value that you provide. So we have to have quick time to value and then recurring value and impact with our customers. That was important to me, and how we tied in marketing to our customers, because marketing has been looked at as a cost center for years and years. And I try to get folks to understand that it's not a cost center. This is a revenue generating center, and we need to focus on it as such. It's as important as sales and CS. And it's also important that we tie product into that. So I would set up regular meeting cadence for our marketing, our sales, our CS, and our product teams to get together and really brainstorm how we're going to provide additional impact and then show that impact to our customers. Now, we're an agency, but we had this second piece that was an AI product that was AI and machine learning fed. And that product was really kind of tricky to sell. AI 10 years ago was tricky to sell because people didn't understand it. They thought that it was a gimmick. Even machine learning, they thought was a gimmick. And so you had to go at it very carefully. You also were selling into an industry, a new product, so first to market product. So there wasn't a budget line item for those marketing teams or those sales teams to kind of shift dollars over from. I wasn't replacing something, I was adding something to their toolbox. And when you look at it and they say, "Well, I don't understand the impact because we have never experienced this before," that alone is a tricky thing to sell. And I do this on a regular with these startups, right? They're oftentimes first to market products. And when we're looking at that, we really have to make sure that our time to impact, our time to value is as quick as possible, and that the return on investment is a no-brainer for them. It has to be high enough that they go, "Man, I cannot live without this. This has changed the tide of our company."
Yeah, because you're not shifting dollars, you're adding. So the time to value has to be there. And one thing that really resonates with me in all of this is that, and I'm sure with all our listeners will also be that your expertise in aligning marketing, sales, product, and customer success teams was definitely important when you were building those sustainable systems. You talked about some practical advice on creating those meeting cadences, right? But do you think today meeting cadence is enough? Or would you have any other practical steps that you would say or strategies to ensure that these functions work very well, cohesively, seamlessly, and not siloed?
Yeah, I think one of the important things is your NPS score. Call it what you will, but the whatever scoring matrix you have for that customer health at your organization is important to share in a very dynamic manner to each of those teams. And then, notifications to them that things are spiking in one direction or another so that we can pivot quicker. I don't want to get into a sunk cost situation with these startups. It's very important that we're continuing to evolve and we're continuing to test, and that we have multiple strategies laid out and we know what our financial limit is and our time-based limit is before we pivot to a plan B or a plan C. That helps really guide us in our path to success and sustainability. When we're talking about just having a meeting cadence, that's one thing. But if we can go into that meeting with the data necessary that's telling us which direction our customers are headed in, or our customer journey is headed in, we already come to that meeting with solutions in mind from each of those departments. And our goal within those meetings is to take the disparate solutions and build a cohesive solution for our customers and for our internal staff.
Yeah.
If you can take enough of that data ahead of time in a model that tells you how you should pivot, most of the work is done. And now we're just like, how do we implement this strategy?
Yeah, the heavy lifting is done. And I also think that when teams are aligned on the same kind of OKRs or KPIs, I think then there's more, I think, interest into achieving those goals. Because if the product team also knows that there's, as you said, NPS is the one metric. NPS should not be just for customer success team. It should be for product team as well, as how they're evolving the product, listening to the customer feedback, how marketing is aligning their marketing, messaging, positioning, etc., to kind of lead to that customer and understanding that end customer. So I think everyone's aligned on that one single source of metric or single source of um, KPI, I would say, that guides everybody. That's critical in my mind. I think most companies where I've seen sustainable, successful growth is when everyone was aligned. I think Cassie Young talked at Pavilion about the first team approach, right? And I think that's the approach we all must be taking in those situations. So, you've done scaling $10 million in revenue and scaled the companies to about 70 million or beyond, I would say. And that's not small feat, right? What are the most critical levers for the C-suite to navigate when they're kind of going through this particular scalable journey? Do you have any insights, practical advice on that?
I mean, a lot of it has to do with their communication and the design of their leadership style. I want people from a very diverse background, diversity in experiences, diversity in cultures. I think when I have that in a leadership team, we're kind of boundless. We've got a lot of experience to tap into, and people's thought process is different. When you have a very homogenous culture in your organization, it's old school. It's what I came into earlier in my career, which is everybody thinks along the same lines. There's a bunch of yes men around who just applaud the CEO and the decisions that they've made. I want there to be a little bit of controversy amongst the leadership team, and I want them to come in able to stand their ground with the solution that they want to propose and the strategy that they're putting forth. And I want us all to get together and say, yes, let's take the pieces from each of these different strategies and let's build a very solid strategy. Let's have our plan B, let's have our plan C. And like I said earlier, let's have our monetary lever and our time-based lever so we know when it's time to pivot. When everybody buys into that strategy as a team, because we've had a lot of discussions about it and we understand the implications of the strategy that we've put in place, then those leaders go back to their teams and they build those teams up to follow that path so that we're all on the same team together. We're all kind of, oh gosh, I can't remember the name of the book that was referred to me recently that I read. And it's about, everybody rowing together in the same direction. You cannot be a solid rowing team if you've got someone out of cadence. So we all need to be in cadence together. That doesn't mean we all 100% agree on the plan, but we all 100% agree that we're going to follow that plan.
And I think that's how it's buy-in, I think.
Exactly. And I also like to make it a really safe place for people to make suggestions at all levels. And this isn't like the hokey suggestion box that's there that nobody really listens to. When you have a leadership team that is very open-minded and fosters a safe environment for people to share their creativity and their suggestions for growth or product expansion, and then you give them the opportunity to look at the data that we have based on, let's do product feature functionality. We've got tools in place now in these organizations very easily that can be leveraged through AI for product and feature requests. So you take, let's say, an account manager's suggestion. Hey, this is what I'm hearing from my customers. They all want this feature functionality. Great. Let's go back to the data and let's see what the data tells us is going to be the quickest lift on a product feature or function that we can add. And what would the potential revenue impact be to the company? What would the potential NPS score lift be to the company? And when we have those kind of conversations with our staff, even at the AM level, frontline, customer level, they start to think differently. No one did that with me when I was a younger individual earlier in my career. They would just say, "No, we're not gonna do that." Well, why wouldn't we do that? And if somebody had had a conversation with me of, "Well, this is the overall potential impact to the organization. This is the impact to the product team. Gosh, we don't have someone in-house right now who can develop that feature or functionality. We would have to go outside. That's this financial impact to the organization." I would have pivoted my thinking a whole lot earlier in my career, and I think I would have been able to provide a greater impact to the organizations that I worked at. It wasn't until I started leading these product teams back in, oh gosh, 2010 to 2014, I led product teams at an agency. That's when I started to hear from the product managers and our designers and developers. This is how long it takes me to produce this result. This is how long it takes me to make this change. I have to unwind this other piece and rebuild it in order to get this piece in here. And so I think having a broader understanding of what it takes to advance a product and then listening to your staff and your customers on what they want, and then leaning into the data to say, okay, we've got these top feature functionality requests, and this is what it's going to take from a monetary perspective to implement this. And here's the return on investment we should see. We are no longer kind of shooting in the dark and saying, well, this is the thing that was top of mind. This is the noise that we're hearing from our customers. Therefore, we're going to build it. And then we go, oh, shoot, that didn't have a positive financial impact on our organization. In fact, it had a negative financial impact on our organization.
And we were distracted and kind of, all over, and we missed a very critical element that could have moved the needle. So yeah, I remember those days when vision was not backed by data or customer feedback, and product teams were really siloed. They were just one of those people who were just taking the orders and developing the product without being given the full, I would say, spectrum of why and the rationale behind why this product evolution is important and what will this do to kind of have an end customer impact. Because when you have that kind of full view of what your product development will lead to, I think those product teams were not as motivated. And that's when we felt that sometimes those product teams, when they were not motivated, the product that was being delivered or developed was not having that kind of an impact that was we had hoped for, even when the customer feedback was there, or even if it was siloed. So great points. Communication, which cannot be siloed, I think that's what been the big theme is. And communication has to be open, transparent, and you're right. As CEOs, it's a responsibility that we all must take to build leaders from within, and that happens when you have, some great CEOs that I learned from. They listened a lot. They synthesized a whole lot of information, and then they kind of connected the dots, or sometimes they even involve the teams to connect the dots through either think tanks or innovation camps or whatnot, and those strategic meetings. Because sometimes those strategic meetings could be led differently, could be done differently, because many times you are in strategic meetings and being in corporate life where they don't lead to an outcome that you were hoping for. This is just a waste of 2 days, and everyone was tooting their rah-rah, and nothing came out of it. And at the end of the year, same results. So absolutely communication is key, but you really hit the nail on data-driven approaches in everything that you do, right? And you've been involved in big data. So we're in this age of data, right? And it's become so accessible, so easy. Technology, ad tech, martech has made it so simplified, even consumer data, that now all the decisions that we're driving in those boardrooms are should be very data centric. But again, buyer intent has to play a role. Understanding of your ICP is very important. So metrics wise, all metrics are not created equal. In your mind and in your experience, what are some metrics that everybody must understand? And in terms of tools that leaders must empower themselves, and then there should be focus and optimization to have their teams focused on those so that there's better performance. And when I talk about performance, I'm talking about revenue growth. At the end of the day, revenue dictates everything in any organization.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of these tools have the options for these tools have expanded a lot over the last couple of years in the age of AI, which is exciting. So, there's more competitors now to something like Churn Zero than there were a few years ago. But I want a tool that measures my customer's health, that then alerts me to potential churn risks before the issue arises. So I want to look at all of these trends so that we can back up all the way to the different linchpins in the customer experience so that we can ensure that we've got a nice, tight, and value add customer experience. And in some companies, that means that we have, a longer than 30-day handoff period from sales to CS. In other companies, it's almost a complete cutoff from signed agreement to handing that deal over to our onboarding specialists and our customer success teams. So I'm looking at tools that allow us to leverage the highest quality data for MQLs to SQLs. And I only want our sales team focused on the highest value SQLs that will be the longest term customers with the highest revenue potential from those customers. That is not just hey, I need these logos because it's a sacrificial logo. And if I get this logo, if I get Nike or Adidas in, then I'll get all of the other brands in, right? That's old school way of thinking. I want to know that if we bring a particular logo on, that we can then leverage that logo. What did we build into our, co-marketing conversation and agreement with that organization? If they're going to be kind of a sacrificial, meaning I'm going to take a haircut on the revenue that I bring in from this company, what is the direct impact that I have in additional revenue from other logos? I'm also looking at things like tiering my accounts. So you've got your ICP, and then we have, I use a bullseye oftentimes. And I'm like, what ring on the bulls, on that target are they? And what opportunity do they have for upsell, cross-sell opportunities? I want to make sure that I have them tiered appropriately on the sales side and the CS side. I want to make sure that we're transferring all of that knowledge and data that we acquired during the sales process over to our CS teams to set them up for success. And I want to make sure that we're measuring the ability to cross-sell and upsell those accounts. Oftentimes, I'm taking really good salespeople out of a sales position of a new logo acquisition role, and I'm putting them over on the CS side, and I'm having them lead the expansion efforts. And it's very controversial, but you have to look at who are the hunters and who are the farmers. And if you are a better relationship person and you're better at uncovering, different aspects of potential revenue growth, I want you over on the CS side. If you are like driven by the hunt and the kill, I want you over on the sales side. But I want you conversing very closely with that, the leads over on the farm side, because I want them to impart wisdom with you that is, hey, this is a really good opportunity for a customer who's going to be a long-term partner of ours versus, you know what, that sounds like a really good opportunity. But data tells us that that type of organization is going to come in for 90 days, for 6 months, for a year. They're not going to expand and they're going to churn out. So if
The
you
cost center.
Exactly. Exactly. So I think it's that communication loop that goes all the way around. It's the what, where, why of sales that we kind of, and customer success that we lost somewhere in the mix that we need to bring back.
I think you really talked everything that I wanted to hear, because account expansion is not even looked at when we talk about revenue growth. Account expansion is sometimes, given lower prominence. And when we do the tiering of accounts and at the sales stage, the handoff route to the CS is not done. And many a times, even if you brought a tier one client at a lower probably solution, there's an opportunity if the handoff is done right for the customer success team. And I love the fact that you said sometimes you got to move people depending upon where their strengths are, where their natural mode of operation is, and where you would find most value, not just for your organization, but as leaders, if you were to develop those people into future leaders, that's where their zone of genius is, and that's where they will thrive. I think sometimes as leaders, we miss out on those aspects, and data can come into play. You work with a lot of at Pavilion. I know that you work with a lot of folks who are trying to find their next chapter and next next gig, and they're tired of this applicant tracking systems going in and
Yeah.
not knowing where they really are good at because nobody told them to focus on certain areas. So what a fantastic way to kind of lead us into building those high performing teams that you have over the last 15 years in your various roles, your current role as CRO as well. um, Definitely high performing teams are done based on their mode of operations, what is in their desire zones. um, I know that you have some sort of secrets when you're kind of creating a culture of accountability, and that culture of accountability stems of course from the leadership team. But how do you create that culture of accountability in your CS teams, your sales teams, your product teams, not just at the senior level, the C-suite level, but also at a mid manager level, because those are the folks who are doing things and getting things done, from that strategic vision to implementation. How do you build that?
Well, I first make it a safe place to fail.
Ah, love it.
Yeah. So I use the analogy of dropping plates. So when I come into an organization, I do a seat skills matrix and a people skills matrix. And I want to understand what skills are necessary to successfully fulfill the responsibilities of the seat at the organization. I might need to change the responsibility matrix a little bit at some point based on the people that we have in house, but it'll give me an idea of what skills are lacking at some point once I do the people skills matrix. And then I know how to recruit folks. What skills do we need? What personalities do we need in house to kind of round things out? Um, but when I end up going through this process, I find that you've got a lot of people who are juggling a lot of things in the air, and they're so afraid to drop anything. And I say, well, what's the worst that can happen? They're like, something could break. We could lose a customer. I'm like, okay, that's okay. And sometimes when you do this, oftentimes you find that the accounts that they're most worried about are the least, um, they have the lowest revenue production. They might not even be profitable accounts, and they're just but they're vocal, right? And so when I look at it, I say, okay, let's tier our accounts. Let's look at all the responsibilities that you have on your plate today, and let's say we're okay if we lose these. This is non-regretted attrition. So don't worry about that. But what I care more about is the employee experience, the customer experience for these accounts. I care more about them. There's a better opportunity and chance that they're going to be long-term partners of ours, and we have opportunity for increased revenue from them. So let's focus on those. Now, for these accounts that, I'm not so worried about, or that are not profitable for us, let's design an exit strategy for them. Let's put a partnership together to refer them out to another organization who can provide a greater level of value to them. And our talk track to them is, you've outlived the value that you can get from us, and we want to make sure that you're well taken care of. Here's another organization or two that we'd like to make an introduction to. Boom. Guess what? Now my team feels really good. They didn't drop that plate. It didn't break. They gave them another opportunity for success. They're now able to better focus on the things that really matter. And when they start to do this and they make it okay to lose an account or to shift an account off somebody's plate or shift it to a self-serve situation, because when we tier, sometimes we end up with self-serve accounts versus hands-on accounts. You see, like, people's shoulders start to relax, you see weights lifted off of them, and they can now focus on what's really important. And they start to share that kind of leadership methodology with their teams. And their teams start to raise their hands and say, hey, I think that this account is at this level, or I think that this responsibility that I've been given is not best served on my plate. It's best served over here on this other team's plate. They're closer to the action over here. They're better served, better equipped to serve this account at this level. And we start to see that people are empowered to make those decisions or those suggestions. And when you do that, I mean, I'm oftentimes too far removed from that specific customer experience or that AM's experience. So I need them to tell me where things need to be moved. And so when I make it a safe place, they start to share it. And we start to see this dynamic shift in the company. And
Creativity is.
yeah, and if you look at my LinkedIn recommendations, there's a pretty solid theme there that I help improve culture in the organization, that I make it a happier and safer place for people to work where they want to stay. And we know that some of the number one indicators of churn are either internal employee transitions on accounts or customer transitions on accounts. So their staff has turned over. So if I can minimize the amount of turnover we have in our company, we know that on a bottom line, that looks really good for us. It's very healthy for us. But when we start to tie that to our customer experience and customer health scores, we see a really positive story that a lot of companies have never paid attention to.
And you know what? You rightly said. Sometimes your customers stay with you because they know that there's somebody who's understood their account from the very beginning, and there is history with that company and that agency. Even I can speak from an agency standpoint, and that longevity is so critical. We have an average customer retention rate of about 6 years. Until most companies, they ideally would either build a team in house or they would get acquired, and then there's another company that's bringing the team in. So there's almost, and we measure that very closely as to, what's the lifetime value for customers, not just from a revenue standpoint, but how many years do our customers on an average stay. And similarly, we do the NPS scoring for our team members because it's really important. Our first employee 16 years ago, still with us. So that's a good story that I could tell in my sales conversations, even in my hiring conversations with people, because we do take care of people. Of course, we've had some churn, but for all reasons, sometimes it's the bad hiring or there's not good alignment. But having said that, um, we are in this new era, new year. I really, definitely want to talk about the future trends and go-to-market strategy. So talk to me a little bit about what do you see looking ahead? What trends do you see shaping up from an AI standpoint, but future of go-to-market strategies, and how can organizations and leaders position themselves for greater success?
Yeah, well, I think the easiest thing to look at is just being more tech enabled. We
Mhm.
can get a whole lot more done in a shorter period of time with the tech that's on the market right now. So be willing to test new tech. Have a process in house to do that, to measure success of new tech. Have a kind of a cohort internally that does that. And that way it's more strategic than just one department's testing a piece of tech, but we don't understand the implications of that tech across the organization. So you need to have a process, a system in place to do that. But when we start to do this, then of course, you're gonna test it, and what is the usability and functionality of that tech, but what's the greater impact on the org? So if this is something that's going to help enable our sales team or going to help measure marketing success, minimize marketing spend waste, which we all want to do, better align our teams, those are all things that we should be looking at in the age of AI right now. Uh, and then making sure that it's consistent across the team. So don't just give tech to one team. I talk to these startups all the time and they're like, yeah, we have Salesforce for our sales team. I'm like, well, what do you have on the CS side? We use Jira or Asana. And I'm like, okay. So the sales team puts all these lovely notes into the system, all these things about this, potential account growth, expansion, revenue opportunities. How does CS get that? So we want to make sure that the tech that we bring in is aligned across those teams and that there's a communication loop back to everyone. And that's so helpful in just growing your organization from the ground up. There's not that many people in CS. We're not talking about a large expense. The expense was already taken care of when we put the tech in initially. And then the other one that I think is a big one that companies miss is the marketing loop over to our customer base. We have to have a continuous marketing cadence to our customers. We have to have automation of marketing. If it's let's say it's a SaaS product, because mostly that's what we're working within. What levers or indicators can be automated within that tech that confirms, um, engagement, adoption, et cetera. And based on that data, what marketing cadences are automatically deployed to those prospects. Because one of the biggest things I hear, most common things I hear from the customers that I take on is our customers don't understand the overall value that we provide. They don't understand all the services that we provide. Why don't they understand that?
Because we stop marketing.
We stop talking to them. We stop marketing to them, right? But it takes me a while to get them to understand that and communicate that to me. And I force them down that path to explain that to me, that it's their fault. They stopped communicating value and additional services to their customers because they saw marketing as a cost center. They saw
Yeah.
marketing as only needed to build, brand awareness and demand. I'm like, that is not where marketing stops. Marketing should be there the entire time.
Yeah, the entire ecosystem until the life of the customer, I would say.
Yeah.
So funny that you brought up because I read a stat that said 80% of the tech that gets bought never gets used. And that's where this concept of SaaS as a service is coming up. And I like to add to that that when any organization is investing into tech, they either have to have that internal cohort of how are you going to use that tech and have somebody accountable for making sure that entire company is either using the tech, testing it out, and then that tech doesn't get you know, put on the shelf and say, feel good factor that we bought this tech and we have this tool in our tool stack. I think you have to invest not just in buying the technology, but also bringing in somebody who will help you use the technology and optimize the technology to the fullest so that there is no disjointedness between sales and customer success. There's no
Yeah.
um, underutilization of that technology. And to offset, somebody else would recommend another piece of technology and you'll buy that, only to find out that there's five tools who do the same thing just because you did not know what the functionality of the tech is. And as we work with more SaaS founders, that's another thing that they could possibly take away is to educate and time to value, and as well as what all the tech and the tool and the functionality can do, so that your customers are not going finding another vendor or another competitor of yours and buying technology from them only to find out a few years down the road or a few months down the road that they have duplication. So
One of the biggest linchpins in a customer experience is implementation, adoption, and engagement. And we have to measure each of those. And if we are not doing that, we are putting ourselves into a potential churn situation. And that is the tech that we sell and it's the tech that we buy. So when I'm in a sales process for a piece of tech for a company, I want to make sure that they have a solid implementation plan for our team. I want to understand what their communication cadence is of time to value, time to impact, and then continuously sharing with me the impact that they're providing to our organization, because I have to then report that to the CEO or to the board or to the PE or the VC firm. And I don't want to have to go and dig for that information, right? Make it easy for me to continue to do business with you. So if we kind of take that mentality with our own customers and we say, oh gosh, that CMO is going to have to convince people who are not familiar with the tech, who just see a dollar on a spreadsheet, that we need to keep this, that there's value to keeping this, and that there's a negative impact from a revenue standpoint if we remove this tech, right? So they're constantly having to justify why they have the tech. I have to do the same thing. So as a SaaS company selling to me, they need to understand that they have to make it easy on me to continuously convince and justify this expense.
yeah, and I think you rightly said it's a ownership that the organization the platform has to take, and the ownership that CM and empowerment to the CMOs and who's who of signing those checks on that technology has to take. What an interesting conversation and amazing. We packed a whole lot in such a short time. You gave away such golden nuggets and insights. Thank you so much, Steph. So before we wrap up, if there's one actionable takeaway you'd like to leave, mid-marketing managers or revenue leaders with, what would that be?
Well, I'm going to use my 2025 word, and that is reimagine, because I think we're in the age where we have the opportunity to reimagine possibilities, how we're going to put things together. Strategies can be modified now. So I think if we kind of go in with our eyes wide open and we continuously remind ourselves to not be stuck in the same rut and expect a different result, we'll already be on a better footing as we go into 2025. I think it's also important that we look at contract terms. Stop signing 2 and 3-year contracts. And yes, I lead sales teams. And boy, I would love for my sales teams to be able to sign 2 and 3-year contracts with our customers. But I feel like that just leads us into laziness from an organization. Maybe we don't have to keep things up. We just, well, they signed a 3-year contract. They're going to pay us for 3 years. But in the age of tech that we're in right now and how fast moving things are, try to sign the shortest contract that you can so that you have the ability to pivot. Sign things into your contract that are that give you an opportunity to leave if the value is not there. And that's tough, but that really puts the onus on the SaaS provider to continuously provide that value to you and reassure you of the value of their product. It's counterintuitive to our, kind of like sign it, forget it situation, set it and forget it that our sales teams are often in. But I think we have so much competition on the market right now that we have the opportunity to remain competitive and keep everyone honest.
And I think that's amazing for even the service provider, because this is exactly how they could possibly, from a service provider standpoint, I could say if you're adding too much value and you're not charging enough, then you could possibly go back and charge more. So I think it's
There you go.
both sides. I think it just keeps, and that's what good partnerships should be and must be. And I think we both have covered both spectrums of both sides of the coin, I would say. So this is good. And I think 2025 is the year to reimagine 100%. That's amazing that you brought it up, Steph. So thank you so much for joining us today. One last question: where can our listeners find you and learn more about the work you do and how you help companies fractionally in tech space and B2B space?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn/Steph Reck. And you can also find me across the Pavilion Network. I am the career enablement and OTB facilitator. So if you need talent at your organization, I'm the person to come to. I support over 1,000 individuals across go-to-market who are looking for the next opportunity or are open to hearing about superior opportunities. And that is a free service. So in addition to my day job being a fractional CRO and hopefully here in the first quarter being in-house full-time CRO at an organization, I can also help you find talent across the go-to-market teams.
What an amazing close to a grand finale to this podcast. Thank you so much, Steph, for joining me again.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Fuel Your Marketing podcast. For more episodes, visit www.fuelyourmarketing.ca.